of cargo from the Crew Dragon to the space station and about 300 pounds back. Many items on board the Crew Dragon. Many of them were consumables such as food. They had other items such as an orbital flight kit that included some patches and pins flown on the spacecraft, taken in and out. Those will be returned back to Earth along with a few other items. Astronaut David St. Jacques floating in first, and McLean right behind him. And you're seeing Station Commander Oleg Kononenko bring up the rear. What you're seeing now is a short lapse in communication between some of the video and audio feeds of the International Space Station being provided right down here to the International Space Station Flight Control Room. That video and audio being fed through an array of satellites called TDRS. They're tracking and data relay satellites that are geosynchronous to the Earth, flying about 23-ish thousand miles right overhead in a way that covers most of the Earth and provides pretty consistent data and communication from the International Space Station down here to the ground. Of course, a shared resource and small gaps in between as we undergo these procedures for hatch closing. Inside here, all of the positions of the room are looking at various parts of the International Space Station. Every system you can think of is managed from here. You have flight controllers that are managing the basically the environmental and life support systems, some looking at thermal, some actually positioning the International Space Station itself, another to figure out where it's going and tracking its trajectory over time. You have officers here that are looking specifically at the Crew Dragon and its integration with the International Space Station, making sure it's okay, relaying that information to SpaceX flight control teams in Hawthorne, California. All teams here are led by the flight director today during this shift of Orbit 2. That's the second of 3 shifts that are staffing this room 24 hours a day. Anthony Varia, you're seeing there at the forward end of the screen. As the Expedition 58 crew undergoes these final procedures for hatch closure, you'll hear Mike Jensen right behind him. He is the Capcom for today, relaying some of the information from all of the controllers here through Mike Jensen, the Capcom, up to the crew members of Expedition 58. Again, a short lapse in communications here, but once we regain them, we should have solid communications through the rest of the hatch closing and what the flight teams here refer to as egress procedures. Basically, the final moments before they close the hatch and leave the inside of the Crew Dragon for good before it finally undocks. Again, that undocking time is scheduled for about 14 hours from now, 1:31 a.m. Central Time, 2:31 Eastern. Though this is a human-rated vehicle, no humans are on it, which is why we are closing the hatches a little bit early. But of course, when SpaceX Dragon brings humans aboard, we expect that hatch closure to be there for a few times. No need to have the astronauts sitting in place for 14 hours. Of course, this is a historic moment, capturing the final moments of the astronauts inside the Crew Dragon. You're seeing David St. Jacques on the left in the middle, NASA's Anne McClain, and on the right, the commander of Expedition 58, Oleg Kononenko of Roscosmos. In the middle is the zero-G indicator that was actually flown up on the Crew Dragon after launch and entering into an orbit on its way to the International Space Station. The zero-G indicator, which they are holding now, actually floated up, basically indicating when they were in zero-G or microgravity environment and ready to begin its next steps towards flying towards the International Space Station. That zero-G indicator is scheduled to remain on board the International Space Station while the Crew Dragon will depart tomorrow morning. Commander Oleg Kononenko exiting the vehicle, returning to the International Space Station. David St. Jacques and Anne McClain enjoying these final moments before they close the hatch to the vehicle, where it will remain docked to the International Space Station for the next 14 hours until undocking tomorrow morning, Central and Eastern Time. Anne McClain II outside the vehicle, David St. Jacques bringing up the rear. He the first crew member to enter Crew Dragon aboard the space station. David St. Jacques initiating the command to officially close the hatch of the SpaceX Crew Dragon. This is the beginning of the end for the Crew Dragon on its Demo 1 mission. And with that, the hatch of the SpaceX Crew Dragon is closed. Hatch closed at 11:39 a.m. Central Time, 11:39 p.m. Eastern. The space station at the time was 253 statute miles over the Pacific Ocean, just west off the coast of Mexico.
Houston Station, Dragon hatch closed, 17:39 GMT.
Copy. Dragon hatch closed, 17:39.
So you heard it confirmed from Davies St. Jacques aboard the International Space Station, the first crew member to enter Dragon and the last to exit on its mission, its Demonstration 1 mission aboard the International Space Station. He called it in Greenwich Mean Time, of course the time that they are operating aboard the International Space Station. We'll call it 11:39 a.m. Central, 12:39 p.m. Eastern Time. Hatches closed to the Crew Dragon, the beginning of the end of its mission on board the International Space Station, and the conclusion of its Demonstration 1 mission set to begin tomorrow morning. Some final pictures taken inside the Crew Dragon and of course on the outside. A little window peeking in, and some of the sunlight from the Earth below still coming in through the windows of the SpaceX Crew Dragon as it flies 253 statute miles over the Pacific. Again, that time, 11:39 a.m. Central Time, 12:39 p.m. Pacific, or Eastern. Just under 14 hours from now, the Dragon is scheduled to undock from the International Space Station. That's scheduled actual physical separation at 1:31 a.m. Central Time, 2:31 a.m. Eastern. So again, after that undocking command is sent, just under 14 hours from now, there will be an actual burn that occurs to physically separate the Dragon from the International Space Station, a series of burns followed by a departure burn, one of many that will actually get the Crew Dragon safely away from the International Space Station outside the keep-out sphere, outside the approach ellipsoid. These are sort of imaginary lines we draw around the International Space Station, rules that help us to identify safety margins and operational procedures. And then the Crew Dragon will begin its descent towards the Earth, scheduled to splash down in the Atlantic Ocean on tomorrow morning, scheduled for 7:45 a.m. Central, 8:45 a.m. Eastern. You're looking at the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Teams here looking at some of the systems aboard the International Space Station and working through the procedures with the crew aboard the International Space Station to close a series of hatches. Of course, the Crew Dragon hatch was closed at 11:39 a.m. Central Time, 11:39 p.m. Eastern. That is one of several hatches that is to be closed throughout these procedures that the astronauts will continue to conduct throughout the day, getting ready for an undocking tomorrow morning, where their main priority will be monitoring the procedure. The Dragon hatch is docked. There are a few hatches in between the Dragon hatch and the inside of the International Space Station. The Dragon itself is docked to the International Docking Adapter. That is attached to the front of the Pressurized Mating Adapter. And those two components are on the very front of the International Space Station. After the hatch is closed between the Dragon and the International Docking Adapter, David St. Jacques working to close the hatch from the Pressurized Mating Adapter to the International Docking Adapter. That's that small component you see on the other side of the hatch that David St. Jacques is working on now. After working through these procedures, he's expected to close the hatch to the Pressurized Mating Adapter in between the Pressurized Mating Adapter and the station itself in the Node 2 Harmony vehicle, or module of the International Space Station, Node 2 being where some of the sleeping quarters of the International Space Station are. For those tuning in, you're looking at a live view from the International Space Station into the Pressurized Mating Adapter and the International Docking Adapter, where you see a white circular hatch that is space